Game collecting can be very difficult in 2026, especially if you're not doing it the right way. There are many ways to do it, but there's one that I find to be the most consistent and the most easy. And it all starts at the flea market. So my general process is this. I'll go to a flea market, I'll walk around, I'll look for any games that I can buy. This doesn't even necessarily have to be stuff I want, just stuff that's well priced. At the end of the day, if you get something for a good price, you can always move it in exchange for something that you want. And that's the strategy that I generally follow. I'll go to the flea market, I'll buy as many games as I can for cheap, and then take them to step 2. So you know that box of games that you just bought for very cheap? What you want to do is take that home and sort through it. First and foremost, you want to go through it and look for anything that you want. It's very possible that you'll find something that you want from the flea market, but what's very important to understand is that if you're going to a flea market, you're not going to walk in and buy a bunch of Silent Hill 2s and GameCube games. It's just not going to work like that. But if you do happen to find and buy something that you want at a flea market, then you take it. Step 2 of sorting through that lot is to skim the top. You take out anything that might be worth selling on its own and list it on eBay. I know the idea of selling stuff online could be a bit daunting for some people, but truly, it's not that difficult. It really isn't. I've had a couple friends who, for years, were scared of selling stuff online because it is a bit daunting, but then, when they finally got around to it, they realized this isn't even that bad. So what you're left with at this point is a bunch of bulk games that you don't really want, and the next step is to trade them into GameStop. You may be saying, trade them into GameStop, but they don't give any money for trade-ins, and that is sometimes true. There are a couple important things to understand about trading stuff into GameStop. The first is that they don't care about condition at all, but as long as the game looks like it might work, they take it in for full value. There's no difference of whether you trade in a loose disc with some scratches or you trade in a brand new copy of a game. They're going to give you the same amount. The second common misconception is that they won't give you anything for your games. You'll get completely ripped off, and that entirely depends on what it is you're trading in. Here's a couple anecdotes that'll prove my point. If you trade in Rule of Rose on the PS2, which is a $500+ PS2 game, they'll give you $71.50 for it. Whereas, if you trade in a disc-only copy of Michael Jackson The Experience on the Nintendo Wii, they'll give you $19.80 for it. The trade values at GameStop are all kinds of messed up. They're always inconsistent, they're always off of market value, and ultimately, if you trade in a bunch of bulk games to GameStop, you probably won't get burned that bad, as long as you're doing your research well. But here's a miscellaneous tip for trading into GameStop. Usually, they have a promotion active, which gives you an extra 20% trade credit if you're putting money towards a new game or a pre-order. So what you do is, while you're trading in your stuff, you put $5 towards any random pre-order that there may be, and then, afterwards, you cancel it. What I mean by this is, let's just give an example. You're trading in $20 worth of stuff, you put a $5 pre-order on Resident Evil Requiem, it brings it up to $24. So that means that you get $19 on your trade card, $5 on your Resident Evil Requiem pre-order, then afterwards, you cancel that $5 on Resident Evil Requiem, boom, you just got yourself an extra $4. Alright, so at this point in the process, you've ideally gotten yourself some GameStop trade credit, you've made your money back on the lot that you bought thanks to selling the top games, and maybe you've even kept a couple for your collection that you wanted. What you do now is you take that GameStop trade credit and you use it on good stuff. Oftentimes, GameStop will run promotions such as 4 $20 games for $40 or 4 $10 games for $20. These are basically 50% off pre-owned game sales, and they're usually very good. These are good ways to build out your collection and just kind of fill the shelves with quality games. And from time to time, they'll do buy 2 get 1 on all pre-owned games, and this is where you can really start getting the heavy hitters. And no, you're not really going to walk into a GameStop and walk out with all the Silent Hill PS2 games, but it is very possible that you'll find some good stuff every now and then. You know, maybe every time they run a buy 2 get 1, you find a complete in-box DS game that you wanted here and some N64 games here. Over time, you'll eventually get everything that you want. And yes, this is all ideally going to be free because you got your GameStop trade credit. There are some other tips and tricks that come with buying at GameStop though. The first one is that they don't charge any different for a pre-owned collector's edition or steelbook. This could be a way to make some extra money. Let's say you find a $5 game that has the steelbook, which is worth about $20. You could sell that steelbook, get your $20, and it'll be a pretty solid little profit. You could even work this into a sale. Let's say you find a $20 game that has a collector's edition, you put it in with your 4 for $40, and then bang, you got half your money back in cash. A lot of what makes dealing with GameStop so good for trying to build a cheap game collection is the fact that they don't track their cases. Now, depending on how you do your shopping at GameStop, you can either get burned by this, or you can exploit it. You could do it like Retro Rebound and order everything online and get shipped complete nonsense. Or you could wait, be patient, wait for everything you want to be in store so you can inspect the condition beforehand, and then eventually you'll come out pretty good. There are 3 other main pillars of game collecting. That would be Facebook Marketplace, yard sales, and thrifting. So I'll go through each of the 3 of them and just give my opinion on them. Starting off with Facebook Marketplace, I think it can be good depending on how you want to do it. The first method I brought up was mainly if you're trying to do it without spending any money and you're not afraid to put a little bit of work in. Facebook Marketplace, I would say, is where you can get good deals on better stuff. Yeah, sure, once in a blue moon you might find a crazy good lot which has a Silent Hill in it, but generally speaking, you'll just get a good deal on some pretty good stuff from another collector. Of all the different pillars of game collecting, it's the one that I definitely have the least experience with, but I've definitely done it before. Although my main use for Facebook Marketplace is just to troll people with stupid messages. I mean, that's just so much fun to do, come on. And now we'll get to the yard sale part of it. Now, I personally don't go to yard sales. Yeah, sure, I'll stop in if I'm passing one, but I'm never out there seeking yard sales, and here's why. Yard sales are just like flea markets, but they're a lot more boom or bust. Lower floor, incredibly high ceiling. You could go yard selling all morning and find absolutely nothing. Or you could go to yard sales all morning and have the greatest day of your life. It's all going to be a lot less consistent because at a flea market, you're going to have hundreds and hundreds of people that are selling their stuff, whereas at a yard sale, you might see 20 people a day at most. But the yard sales are generally going to have a lot more stuff. Yard selling is, I would say, the second best way of building a game collection. It's definitely a better way to get the top end stuff for cheap, but how often is that really going to happen? You could definitely do the same process that I did earlier, but with yard sales instead of flea markets, and you'll probably have a similar enough degree of success, but it's all relative. And as for the last pillar, thrifting. Thrifting is not very effective for game collecting unless you're also looking for other stuff along the way. Like if you resell clothes or shoes or you refurbish furniture, you'll probably have a pretty good time going to thrift stores, but if you're looking for just games, it's not going to be very fruitful. You might as well just spend your time going elsewhere. So those are all the different processes that I'm familiar with when it comes to buying games, but how about what games to actually buy? We'll start off as looking at the games as far as just their monetary value alone. The most important thing to know when going game hunting is which games not to buy. I'll just give a couple blanket examples as to which games not to buy. Any Kinect games you don't want to buy. Any NHL games you don't want to buy. Any MLB games you don't want to buy. Any Wii Fits you don't want to buy. Any U-Draw games you don't want to buy. Those are the ones that I think are just blanket. You do not want to buy these. They are worthless. You will not be able to move them. Everything else, you kind of have to learn on your own. You'll often hear that sports games are worthless, and this is not necessarily true. NFL, FIFA games, and NBA games, and the college games all sometimes have value. It all depends on which title specifically you're looking at, so it's better to just learn those types of sports games on their own. But generally, just be curious. If you see a game that you don't know, look it up, see if it's worthwhile. There's an app called GameEye that I love using that just kind of has every game in the price chart, and you can just search for it. With enough experience, you'll be able to just look into a box of games and then say, alright, I'd be comfortable paying this amount for it. And then you really can't lose. And now let's look at the games as far as actual games. This is all about games, right? We got to talk about the games themselves. And the most important thing to know is that generally speaking, the best games are not that expensive. As long as we're not looking at Nintendo stuff, pretty much all the best games of all time are very cheap. There are so many great games that are incredibly common and incredibly cheap to buy. The Red Dead Redemption games, The Witcher 3, the Mass Effect trilogy, the Batman Arkham trilogy, these are all incredible games that are super dirt cheap. Those are all games that you will find a million times over and are also going to last you a long time. And as you build your collection, your backlog will grow and you'll reach a point like I am right now. Pretty much any game that I would realistically want to play, I already have. It's such a beautiful thing. And that's why building a game collection, in my opinion, isn't that difficult as long as you know what you're doing. We've uploaded plenty of different game collecting and game hunting videos in the past. If you guys want to go back and watch how this entire strategy plays out in real time, you can check out some of my game hunting videos. They're all out there. So I hope you all learned something and have a good one. Or you could just buy everything on eBay or retro game stores and go broke.